To be alone is often a fear that most cannot consider, much less face. The silence of solitude terrifies because it leaves us with nothing but ourselves, stripped of the noise that so often fills our days and drowns out the questions we are too afraid to ask. Yet in solitude lies an incredible gift, an unmatched gift, a chance to meet the self hidden beneath the weight of the world's demands. In solitude, we find our way. We hear the voice that speaks only when the echoes of others fade away, the voice that has been with us all along. It calls us back to who we are, back to what is true, the helpful tones of others, lending their opinions, their advice, their expectations. Those echoes recede, and we're left with clarity. Yeah, it's far better to be alone than to be driven mad by the endless race for attention. Far better to sit with yourself, even in discomfort, than to seek connection as a means to see your reflection. For if you cannot see yourself, how will anyone else ever see you? How can a world glimpse the depths of your soul if you cannot first turn inward and know its shape? The chaos is not in solitude. The chaos is in the race, the frantic, desperate chase for another's attention, their approval, their touch. We call it connection, but it is often a disguise for something else entirely. It is a grasping for validation, a reaching for someone to tell us who we are because we cannot bear to face that question alone. When we chase others to know ourselves, we hand them the pen to write our story. We become the characters in plays that we did not write or roles submitted for publication by the very act of seeking their validation. And we didn't even audition for the parts. The torture is not in being alone. It is in surrendering our identity to the shifting opinions of others, hoping they'll see us, love us, and understand us. But they can't, not fully. For even if they offer their love, their appreciation, their touch, it will never reach the parts of us we have not claimed for ourselves. To sit alone is not a punishment. It is a profound act of courage, a sacred rebellion against the world's insistence that our worth lies in its applause. Solitude is where we come to know ourselves, where we strip away the roles that we've played and masks we've worn, leaving only the truth of who we really are. The silence of solitude is not empty. It is full of possibility, full of the voice that we've silenced far too long. In that silence, we meet the self that is not shaped by others' opinions or defined by their expectations. We meet the self that has always been there, waiting to be seen. In solitude, we reclaim what is ours. We take back the pen and we write our own story, not for an audience, but for us. We find the peace that does not come from the absence of noise, but from the presence of truth. Think about it for just a moment. What it feels like to be connected, to amplify oneself into the world, into other people's lives, not literally by intention, but just by experience. When we know ourselves, connection becomes something entirely different. It's no longer a race for validation or for becoming what others want us to be, but a meeting of equals. We do not seek others to discover who we are. We share who we are with them. This is where intimacy begins, not in the desperate need to be seen, but in the quiet confidence of being known by yourself first. When we bring our whole selves into connection, we amplify one another's light. We do not complete each other, we complement each other. This kind of connection is free from fear. It's not burdened by the weight of needing someone to validate us. It is not fragile, dependent on constant reassurance. It is strong, rooted in the truth of who we are, unshakable even when the world around us shifts. The problem is oftentimes we feel pain and peace in solitude. So to sit with yourself is not easy. It requires facing the parts of you that have been buried beneath the noise, beneath the layers, beneath the doubts, the fears, the wounds you hoped that someone else would heal. Solitude demands that you confront what you've avoided, not to break you, but to free you. In that freedom, you find a peace that cannot be taken away. It is not the fleeting peace of a kind word or a loving touch. Those things are beautiful. It is the lasting peace of knowing who you are and knowing that you are enough, just as you are, without anyone else's opinion or approval. This is the paradox of solitude. What feels like isolation becomes connection. What feels like loss becomes discovery. What feels like emptiness becomes fullness. When we have faced ourselves, we have embraced the silence and seen the truth of who we are, we return to the world transformed. We no longer need the applause of others to feel worthy. We no longer seek their touch to feel loved. We no longer rely on their opinions to define us. Instead, we meet them as our true selves, purely, whole, unshakable. And we give freely, boldly, without apology, to love deeply and to connect authentically, not to fill a void, but to share the abundance that we have found within. Solitude is not the end of connection. It is the beginning. To be alone is not to reject the world, but to prepare for it. To be alone is to know yourself so fully that when you are with others, it is not for validation, but for the joy of amplifying who you already are. Virginia Woolf says, "How much better is silence, the coffee cup, the table? How much better to sit by myself like the solitary seabird that opens its wings on the stake. Let me sit here forever with bare things, this coffee cup, this knife, this fork, things in themselves, myself being myself." See, there's a peace in solitude that the race for connection can never offer. It's a peace that comes from knowing yourself, from reclaiming your identity, from finding the voice that has been drowned out for far too long. When we embrace solitude, we free ourselves. We free ourselves from the need to be seen, to be validated, to be completed by someone else. We find the strength to stand alone, not because we reject others, but because we have found ourselves and then invite others in. And when we return to the world, we do so with open hands, offering the fullness of who we are, no longer seeking to be known, but ready to share the gift of knowing ourselves. Then we are known. So, are you listening?